Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. I'm your host, Aaron Hale, and this is Point of Impact. Let me ask you this question. Are you not feeling it? Not feeling the love at work? You don't have the passion, the drive. You're just clocking in, clocking out. My guest today is a perfect example of starting out life with all hustle and no passion. He couldn't find something that truly fit his personality and his values, and will simply bounce around from paycheck to paycheck, occupation to occupation. My guest, Demetri Takos, D, is the host of the Team House podcast. But before that, he grew up in Brooklyn, New York, as what he describes as a half criminal childhood, and bounced from construction work to owning a restaurant to becoming a professional poker player. And none of it really struck that chord with him until one day he was listening or watching his it was one of his favorite podcasts, the Team House podcast. And he saw that there was a need. It was a way to make the show better. One of the things he'd done previously and caught the spark of becoming a creator was producing a feature-length film. While talking about it, he says it had limited success. However, it was a start down a road, a path to something that really did give him that fulfillment, a pleasure, as well as something that might pay the bills as well. So today, he's the producer of the Team House podcast, and he's loving it. He enjoys the technical aspect of it, the creative aspect of it, and the fact that he's creating something. He's making and recording history, and he's looking forward to doing a whole lot more of it. Before we get into it, I want to ask you something real quick. If you could, please give the show 5 stars and leave a line or two about what you like so much about the show. And while you're at it, share it with your network. A small act that only takes a couple seconds can make a huge impact. With that, and without further ado, my conversation with Demetri D. Takos. D, thanks for being on the show. I'm really excited to have you on and can't wait to get into it. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Aaron. Thanks a lot for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. And, thanks for coming on the Team House, too. It was a great episode.
Well, they had me on your show. I love what you guys are doing with Team House, and I'd love to share your story and your podcast and everything you've been up to with the audience of Point of Impact. So, tell me, before we get into some of that stuff with the podcasting, what you're up to today, how about a little bit of the background? What are the events and influences that forged the D of today?
It's a good question. I mean, I know about it. Like, the first thing I thought about was I was born and raised in Brooklyn, pretty insular, I would say community, because I'm Greek American, like I'm first generation. My dad was born in Greece, came here. My mom was born in America to immigrants that came from Greece. So growing up, it was really, I went to a Greek school. I had 30 kids in my class up until high school. And then when I went to I went to Fort Hamilton High School in Bay Ridge, and my freshman class went from 15 kids in my 8th grade to 9th grade. I had 1,400 kids in my class in my freshman grade. So, it was a bit of a shock, I would say. I mean, it wasn't too bad because I had a bunch of friends from school and kids that we knew, so it wasn't as brutal as you'd think it would be. But it was a super insular, I would say, community, and it still is today. The Greek community, it's very very tight knit, and which is a good thing, but it also like I would argue has some detriments to it. But having said that, like, my whole life I've just been kind of bucking the system a bit. Didn't want to go down the normal path. So like, I would say like big influences that like changed me. One of my mom's brothers passed away when I was like 9. And I could tell that was like a shift. Also, again, this is fast forwarding a little bit, like after college, I was in my 30s. My other uncle passed away too. We were like business partners too. So that was a big shift basically from always thinking about like what's next, can I make this more successful? Can I build another restaurant? Can we start another restaurant? To really like looking at like, is the money really that worth it? Because he did go in like a pretty, he killed himself. So, and it was money based and it was all that. So I kind of like readjusted my thought process after that event. So those are kind of like the big ones.
So growing up in Brooklyn, was it straight? Was it just like Do the Right Thing? Was it straight out of that, or what? What was the childhood like?
My childhood was pretty good, man. Like I went to a Greek school, so it was literally like you're living in a city. Brooklyn's got 2.5 million people. New York like 8.5. It was very insular. It was weird. I mean, it was not. I don't think it's a prototypical childhood. But I was lucky, like my parents were there, they were involved, we had a community around us. I had great friends, some of which I'm still like tight with, 30 years later. But it's Brooklyn still at the end of the day. So when you get into high school, you're going to, deal with like fighting and bullying and stuff like that. And like really, get a bit of a piece of that, like, I don't want to call it action, but it went from like 0 to 100 pretty fast after my 8th grade year when I went to high school, like a public high school, with fighting and, I guess boys being boys kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a relatively good, I would say like upper middle class, I would say for Brooklyn, because it's not cheap here, but it was a good, I would say it was a pretty good childhood overall. I'm lucky in that way, thankfully.
So what did looking at your LinkedIn profile and some of the other information you can find online, I saw that you studied construction, got a certificate in that. You are a karate master, which is interesting in itself, because karate was like the thing of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's all sorts of different martial arts. But
yeah, well, the karate
of the day karate was the only thing you could find.
Yeah, so that's like in jest, kind of. I just made that up and said that I was a karate master because I like to troll and like make jokes and stuff. So the karate stuff. I mean, I think I'm maybe a yellow belt in karate when I went to karate as a kid. But yeah, I did construction management, because if you're Greek, it's like restaurants, construction, real estate, right? So I went into construction because we do have a lot of people who are in construction, like peripherally around in my world. And it just made sense, and, you can make a great living, like as a construction manager in the city in New York. The money's definitely there, but it was brutal. It was so boring. I'm not the type of guy who's going to sit in an office, 9 hours a day and call up subcontractors to complain about like, where's my plywood and stuff like that. I don't really care about like building a building and the architecture of it. It was super tedious. So that's kind of when I bucked it and I started doing my own thing a bit. I quit college. I went to the Institute of Design and Construction. I didn't finish that. I left like with, 6 credits left. And started really doing my own thing. Because at that point, I was like, 22, 23. And I was working, 9 hours a day, then going to school at night, all construction. I was in an all construction office working. And it was just so, I couldn't see myself doing this for the next, 40, 50 years of my life. Like, I wasn't interested in that. So, I kind of just went my own way a bit, you could say.
So, what did you find? Where did you go? What was the answer?
So back then, like that was, I mean, with hindsight now, it seems like, I had it figured out. I really didn't at all. Like I was kind of lost there for a while, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And like to supplement kind of my income, I just played poker. Because back then, that was like when poker really like blew up, like on ESPN, the World Series of Poker and online poker. So, I started playing poker with my buddies, just for fun. Then you move to like higher games and you think like, oh, I could probably like squeak out a living here doing this. I played poker for like, I want to say like 4 years, 4.5 years, up until I got into the restaurant business and like kind of got away from the poker thing. Cause it sounds sexy, but you're playing poker 4 or 5 nights a week. It becomes a job like anything else, really.
I never pictured it like that, but I have heard of lots of people who, yeah, they describe poker as a profession, but I didn't imagine it, clocking in,
That's what it felt like.
working poker and then clocking out type of thing. But,
Yeah.
makes sense. Now, you also describe yourself as, in your childhood at least, as half a criminal.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, growing up, we did some crime. I'm assuming the statute of limitations is up. So we nothing crazy like in terms of like drug dealing or anything like that. We never got that nuts, but gambling, bookmaking, we would run. This is the one. Hopefully the ATF isn't listening. We would, in New York, the cigarette prices are super expensive. So what we would do is we'd run like cars down to Virginia and buy cartons of cigarettes and bring them up here and sell them to like the different bodega delis here that sell cigarettes. We did that for a bit. There was a myriad of like hustles that we were trying to pursue that were kind of outside the legal realm. But I think it all comes down to like, I don't know, I had this chip on my shoulder my whole life, and it was all about like getting more and trying to make more money and figure out ways to make money. Yeah, so that was kind of what I ran. It was like I was like a 1930s, 20s bootlegger, you know what I mean? Like bootleg cigarettes and bookmaking, basically. We never got really into the hard stuff. Occasionally, somebody would have to pay a debt and they would pay in like hard drugs and stuff like that. So I have a couple of experiences where like I'm being handed a brick of like cocaine for payment, and that's like that puckers your butt a little bit, I would say, because like I didn't want to deal with the drug stuff at all. So like, yeah, half a criminal, I would say. I had a good heart, but yeah, I was never robbed anybody or anything like that. It was always kind of like a service. I thought of it. We were providing a service for people, right? So
That's kind of, speaking of service, when did things start turning around for you? When did you find, I don't know, your path? Was there like a pivot point, an epiphany moment?
I was really getting kind of over the poker stuff. So my uncle, who passed away, 5 or 6 years ago now, he started a restaurant in Brooklyn, Greek restaurant, and I kind of got involved with him there for a couple of years. And then eventually I found my own restaurant, like a existing place that was there for years. And I bought that for like a really good deal, and started getting into the restaurant business because, of course, I'm Greek and the stereotype's always going to be there. It was construction and the restaurant business. And it was a good run for a while, until it was a good run for like 2-3 years. Like it enabled me to like make enough money to like, I produced a feature film that I wrote myself. Like we shot it in Brooklyn over like a month in May of 2017. And that was a cool process of making that. So it enabled me to do a lot of stuff. But at the end, I mean, just chasing the money, looking for another restaurant. We had gone into we found a new spot, and we had an investor. The investor midway backed out, and my uncle kind of went ahead of himself and like took out some tough, hard money, basically 25% loans that nobody knew about, and was spending money, and it kind of caught up to him. I don't think this is the only reason why he killed himself, but I feel like, you know, it was, you know, he had a drinking problem. So I think he did a lot of self-medication too. So it was like a combination of everything, like the perfect storm that like pushed him over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say from that point on in late 2017 was when like it kind of snapped in me a little bit, where I was like, I'm not going to let chasing money dictate how I feel or my, you know, dictate my life. You know what I mean? Sure, you need a baseline amount of money to be, you know, have your essentials, but like I wasn't going to be like, oh, no matter what, let's, you know, grow for growth's sake. Let's just keep making money because that's all that matters. It's not all that matters.
So, I mean, what happened after that?
So my uncle passed away, and then I was looking to get out of the restaurant business. So it was kind of a lengthy process to sell my spot. Like it took about a year. I ended up selling it. I was financially essentially ruined. You know, because my uncle took out those loans. He didn't pay some sales tax. So a lot of the people after he passed away got left with that stuff. So I'm kind of digging out of that. And for a while there, a couple of years, like I was just, you know, meandering, just like, you know, flapping in the wind, trying to figure out what the hell to do. I was looking again at getting back into the construction world, and that really like bummed me out. Like I didn't want to do that. I was going to do it if I had no other choice. And then I kind of like got into podcasting. I've been flirting with podcasting since like 2010. And yeah, I got into podcasting and I found the Team House guys super lucky, like so lucky it's not even funny.
Well, I mean, how did that come along? And like, what was it that you said you started with in entertainment with sorry, I'm stumbling over my tongue right now, tripping over my tongue. You started in entertainment with a feature-length film. How did that go over? And then is that kind of the thing that sparked this foray into podcast production?
I would say it was mixed. I always wanted to like be a film director. I remember like my 8th grade yearbook. What do you want to be when you grow up? It was film director. So I had written this script like in 2014, I want to say. It was an idea that I had for a long time. It's a crime drama, you know, not breaking the mold in terms of originality, but, and I was getting super like, you know, bored at the restaurants. So I was like, I'm going to take a month and I'm going to shoot this thing. And it was like my naivete helped me in terms of like not being scared about like the daunting task of making an hour and 40-minute movie. And I just I just did it. Like I just went for it and, you know, got a crew, got a cast together, did auditions, the whole, like ran through the steps. And it was funny because like some of the people were telling me, it's like, hey, why don't you shoot like a short film, you know, something that'll take a day or two to shoot, you know what I mean? 10 minutes and see how that goes. And I'm like, I don't know. I have a 128-page script here that I'm happy with. Like, why don't we just shoot for 20 days and put it all together? Like, right? We just make a short every day and get it done. So my naivete definitely helped me from deterring myself for doing it. And, you know, you lay your head back at night and you think that, you know, you dream about like, you know, I'm going to get to Sundance and do all this and I'm going to get discovered as a film director. That didn't happen. It was definitely a loss of money. Like I burnt, you know, a cool 40 grand on it. But, you know, the way I thought of it was like, hey, even if this doesn't get bought, all right, I'll become a film director and make movies. When I'm 80, I could be like, I made the movie. Like I did it, right? Like, and you know, 50 grand or 40 grand over like the course of 60 years, I think it's worth it in terms of as an investment. So, I just rocked and rolled, bro. I just did it. And the podcasting. So like back in the day, my boys started like a podcast back in like 2010. We were dabbling, doing stupid stuff, you know, just bullshit with your friends. And I was always like a fan of podcasting, and I was like looking at like how the business of podcasting works. And the way I like tricked Jack Murphy into hiring me at the Team House was I've been a fan of Jack since his soft rep days, so I'd followed him on Twitter forever. And I was doing my own podcast where I'd interview people, so I just tweeted out, I'm like, hey, Jack, a big fan for a long time. Would you be down to come on my show? And fortunately, you know, timing was right. He said, yeah. Came on my show. This was like a few years now, 2.5 years ago. We hit it off. They had like a good vibe. And then I was a fan of the Team House. The Team House was going on. So I offer him like, hey, you guys should really do clips for your long, you know, because the shows are like 2.5 hours. Like, you should really do clips, like, you know, 5-10 minute clips. Like, I can't really do that. I don't really edit. I'm like, I'll do it. He's like, I can't really pay you. I'm like, I'll do it for free. So I started that for like a month and a half. And like the setup at the Team House, they do it live, right? We do it live every Friday. So we have a TriCaster that like switches the camera angles in real time, right? And in the beginning of the Team House, it was just Jack and Dave and nobody working the TriCaster. So you'd see the first 5 minutes, Jack would get up, rearrange the TriCaster, sit back down, be real frustrated. And then you have to do an interview with somebody. So like you know, it's a nightmare. So I'm like, hey, you really should have somebody who like switches the cameras for you. Luckily, again, they were in Brooklyn, right? And I'm in Brooklyn. He's like, you want to just come do that? I'm like, yeah, sure. And that's how I got with the Team House. And eventually, like, because I am, I guess, a business-minded person, like, I can't really turn that off. I started getting the Team House sponsors, you know, started clipping again, trying to, you know, get guests. Like, I really immersed myself in it because I do love the show. I was a fan first. And it's really grown. Yeah.
Oh, I just asked you guys are in Brooklyn now.
Yeah, it's always been in Brooklyn, like Williamsburg, Bushwick area.
And how did, I mean, you said that the Team House is going on before you would play, you know, into the space, right? So you jumped in after it had already been going, and it was on your suggestion of making some creative edits, such as changing the camera angle, that kind of sort of things that they brought you on as producer.
Yeah. I mean, the way they were doing it, yeah, really, they needed a third guy just because, like, Jack is a maniac. Jack definitely jumps in head first too. Like, he bought when he got out of soft rep, he bought a TriCaster. That's like an $8,000 piece of equipment. Because initially they wanted to make like they wanted to do like D&D games, right? Like live Dungeons and Dragons games, which then evolved to the Team House. So he had this piece of kit that was like super expensive that's made for like live broadcasting, and nobody really there to man it. So their production quality was not great. I'm not saying I made it completely a million times better. We still have our issues always, but yeah, just the added person that's there to switch the camera angles live, to Jack, Dave, and then the guest really takes it up a big notch. So it wasn't that tough. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I never used a TriCaster before in my life. I definitely faked it till I made it, but that's like my whole life. And yeah, and then like I'm just interested in the podcasting world. So like I would listen to other podcasts and hear their sponsors and hear what sponsors were spending money on podcasts, and I would just hit them up myself, you know, and try to solicit some business. And it's gone pretty well in terms of like sponsors and stuff like that. Super lucky. I mean, usually I don't know what the fuck I'm doing when I get into stuff, and I just give it a go because like I really don't have much shame. Because like, what's the worst someone's gonna tell you? No. Like, okay, you move on. You know, you keep cracking. So it was like a perfect storm, man. Like I'm not gonna say that I'm not talented. Like I can make things work and I can quote unquote produce because I have, but also like there's just so many X factors, right? Like them being in Brooklyn, Jack saying yes on Twitter, that coming on my podcast, Jack saying yes to me doing the clips, and then finally Jack saying yes for me to come in and do the live switching and producing. So it was just super lucky, cosmic. You know, I remember people telling me when I first bought my restaurant, because it was a really good deal, and it was a restaurant that's still around. It's called Bonnie's Grill. If you guys are ever in Brooklyn, check that out. My buddy owns it now.
You still a part of that?
No, I sold out completely. But like when I bought the restaurant, because I got it for a very good deal, people were like, "This is your life lottery. You don't know how lucky you are." And it's funny because cut to 4.5 years later, it did not feel like a life lottery. It felt like an absolute drag on my life. And I would argue finding the team house and it growing to where it is, and like the guys accepting me and being generous, you know, like the guys they've given me a third of the team house. Like I'm a 1/3 partner in the show, which they didn't have to do. Like, so I would argue finding the team house, finding Jack and Dave is definitely like the life lottery, because this is a job, and it's like, oh my God, I'm doing a podcast as a job. It's like a Jill. You know what I mean? You really think about it, like, I can't believe this.
But okay, so tell me a little bit more about the podcast and its history, your part in it, and because I really want to understand how it seems like most of your life it's been a lot of hustle without finding the right passion. So what is it about producing this show that it seems to fit?
I think the first thing is I was a fan of the show. You know, I love the guests on it. I like the idea, like, you know, taking down history from people who have lived it in the GWAT, and, you know, even before that, like military history and espionage history. I love that to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So it just fit in. It wasn't some podcast that I really had no interest in, you know, and I had a lot of respect for Jack and what he's done in his career as a journalist, right? Like, he was the kind of guy who's like bucking the system a little bit and writing the tough stories that people, you know, or the military might not want to hear or have out there. And I just had a lot of respect for Jack. And so combine that with the subject matter of the team house and the guests that we have on, I mean, it's cool as shit, right? Like, so it was like super easy. And like, Jack's not a pain, like not a, you know, tyrant. Dave's not a tyrant. They're awesome. You know, it just works. Like, dude, you have no idea. I think about it like randomly and I'm like, holy shit, I'm so lucky finding it. I think it really has to do with luck. It really has to do with a lot of timing, being successful and not successful money-wise, but finding something that fits, that gives you a little bit of a purpose and stuff like that. You can make it work, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You gotta find that purpose. You gotta find the why behind anything you do, and you know that's the whole. I think that's kind of, you know, the basic building block of meetings of life is that you got to have a passion towards something. Passionate work makes it everything else more worthwhile. So you found passion in making the show the best it is, best it can be. It sounds like you've got, you know, great partners to work with. What's next? What do you see in the future for the show, for yourself?
I mean, I definitely want to keep growing the team house. We just passed 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is incredible. Like, definitely keep growing the team house. I'm talking to some people about doing another podcast, like producing another podcast. It's like a totally different realm, like 2 comedians from Brooklyn. We're getting that going. More podcast realm stuff. I also have another buddy who spent 15 years working on a book. And he finally got it optioned to become a TV show, which is incredible. 15 years he's been grinding away at this, and he finally got it optioned. So what we're trying to do now is put together a few stories, you know, maybe some, you know, based on books from Team House guests, and try and get them pitching them to like Hollywood and stuff. That's a long shot, but we have this like trove of like incredible stories from the Team House that we'd like to like maybe try and get some pitch to like Hollywood, you know, streamers, and try and make them TV shows or movies or something like that. That's definitely the long shot, but I like working on that, like kind of on the side. And my friend, you know, he did the hard work, 15 years grinding it out, and he finally got his deal, you know, so he's kind of in the door. So that's kind of what you need. You need to establish a beachhead in that world, like that Hollywood world anyway, where like agents and managers will like call you back, or like at least a reply to an email. That's I mean, we're also starting this is an exclusive. I guess we haven't announced this, but that's okay. Like we're working with a former 160th pilot. His name is Greg Coker. Absolute madman, absolute gem of a human being. And he makes knives, handmade knives. So we're in the process of like starting like a knife company, basically. So something like a product you can sell instead of like just shilling other products, like we have our own real product. So we're doing that. So yeah, it's looking up, man. Like I'm telling you, like the day I sold Bonnie's, the restaurant, and like it's not like I got a big check and could sit on my ass and like I was literally I owed money. I literally owed money after I sold Bonnie. So it wasn't like a windfall. I didn't know what the fuck I was gonna do. I was like, Jesus Christ, because I always wanted. I liked restaurants. I wanted to get into restaurants, but wanting to get into the restaurant business and being on the other side of it is very different. It's like a boat, right? Like the first day you buy, it's the best, and this day you sell, it's the best. Throughout it, it's not that great. It's kind of a grind. But again, like these are real like first world problems. But there's a big. I remember the day I sold Bonnie's. I was like, "Fuck, what the hell am I gonna?" Sorry, I'm cursing. Like, what am I gonna do now? I'm 34. I don't have a college degree. I knew what it was. And like my other uncle, was extremely successful in like construction and development in New York. He would bust my chops, understandably so, because he cares. And like I would bust my nephew's chops too, about what are you gonna do now? And I remember this was like once I first started working with the team house. So I'm making like 50 books a show on the team house, right? We do 4 shows a week. That was what I was making. And I told him like, hey, listen, I'm definitely going to keep grinding out this team house thing. Because I told him like, I know I could pan out my life right now. I can come work for you, make a good living. If I just dial it in, I can probably end up making $100,000 plus a year in construction. And that's a great living, but it's a miserable living. If I'm a real piece of shit and a real go-getter, I can make more than that. I don't want to do that for the next 30, 40 years of my life. I don't want to do that. I know I could do that. I know I could be successful, and if I really put my mind to it, because we have the connections. We're in a privileged position to be able to like make deals. I could start my own construction company and start work. There's ways to make good amounts of money in that world. I just didn't want to do it. So I kept grinding with the team house, and it's been pretty great. It's been, not just money-wise. It's just been awesome to, like, transform the place. We got a new studio. We have 2 sets. It's grown numbers-wise. The guests we have are, like, top-notch. It's a real privilege to be working for them and working with the team house and finding them and it working out. Like, I really do have to pinch myself sometimes.
I do want to ask you about and have you expand a little bit on 2 aspects of the podcast. One is the business of podcasting. How do you measure the show's success? How does it generate the revenue? What platforms are you on? That kind of thing.
Sure.
The nuts and bolts of podcasting. And the other thing is, and maybe I should wait. Let's talk about that a little bit. And then the other part is the storyline part. The stories behind it. So
yeah,
tell me about the business.
I mean, I love the nuts and bolts of podcasting. It's like my favorite thing to talk about. So we're averaging ballpark around 30,000 views and listens per show. Some shows, you get a Delta guy on or something like that, they take off. But the way I sell them to advertise it, the way I sell the show to sponsors is 30,000 views and listens per show on average. Our revenue comes from YouTube, our audio platforms, programmatic ads. So like, how YouTube runs ads throughout a video? The audio version runs ads throughout the audio stream, or like Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to pods. So we make money from the YouTube ads, the programmatic ads from the audio. We have a Patreon that has about 500 people that pay about $5 a month on average. And we do the live reads too. So there's definitely like 4 main revenue streams, I would say, from the pods. The way I still do this. I would get advertisers for me would be, I would obviously listen to other podcasts, listen to the brands that they're promoting, and then hit those brands up. And then I would do this like weird thing where I'd be looking through Instagram and, you get Instagram ads for stuff. So whenever I would get an Instagram ad for, let's say, I don't know, a pair of underwear or whatever, I see this brand is spending money on advertising. So I would hit up the brand off the ad and be like, hey, would you guys be interested in sponsoring the Team House, and give them a whole pitch deck and what it's about. And then eventually I kind of tricked my algorithm. I would look for different brands that would make sense for the Team House, right? Because we're predominantly male, 80% in the US, 18 to 54 is like 80% of our viewing. So I would trick my algorithm into showing me advertisers, and I would hit those advertisers up like incessantly, like not single ones, but like I would shoot out like 30 emails a day to different brands about sponsoring the podcast. And yeah, you're striking out a lot, but if you have a 5% hit rate, you could do pretty well.
So you have, do you do outreach for these advertisers? You reach out and market to advertisers to come sponsor the program, or you're saying that due to your popularity that they generally come to you?
So we're not to that level yet. We have a handful of sponsors that have hit us up because we're like an established show, but I would say like 95% is me soliciting from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's me. Like I'm sitting down at night and I get it to like a mode where I'm shooting off like 40 emails to 40 different brands over a course of an hour about potentially sponsoring the show. We've also gotten lucky too with some of our guests. Some of our guests have products and companies, and they've sponsored our show, which is really cool. But I would say 90% is me going after them. We did have a podcast network that was supposedly representing us to get us sponsors.
Yeah.
And I would tell anybody who has a podcast that's really doing well and like at the point where they can get monetized to really tread lightly, because they did not produce for us, and we just ended our relationship with them recently. Because in the world of business, I guess there's a lot of like middlemen who really don't do much and expect more. Like I remember telling them when we made the deal, I'm like, I want you to, what's the saying? Over deliver, but like undersell, over deliver, like that saying. Like, this is what I want from you. I made it plain as day, and they didn't really have it. And the way they were doing it was they were piggybacking off another marketplace that sells ads for advertisers. So they really weren't doing anything. They had no sales team. They really weren't like hitting the grindstone. And I calculated this. The amount of ads and sponsors that they brought us compared to what I was doing by myself, one guy, no sales team, I was outpacing them like 4-1 in sales. So I thought to myself, like, what do we even need these guys for? They're not doing anything. They're not bringing really any value here. We're giving them a big cut, and it just didn't make sense. So like, we're finally free of that, thankfully.
So reaching out to these advertisers and to attract them, you tell them about how many viewers, how many impressions you've got, and you've got various platforms from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and in YouTube. But all combined, you say you've got 30,000, 60, 100,000 impressions per episode. And from that, they can expect a certain percentage of sales. And in exchange, what is an ad spot?
Yeah. All right. So like the way it works, usually it's like a flat fee most of the time. The way they base it on is it's called CPMs. So cost per milli, so every 1,000 views. So there's like a formula, not a formula, there's like a base number. We usually charge, depends on the brand though, because if we have a brand that we know, if it's a former guest or something like that, we'll give them discounts. But ballpark number is about $20 per CPM. So you get $20 per 1,000 views. So I'm selling it at around 30,000 views. So that's $600-ish per ad for a 1 minute live read. So the ads that you hear on the team house, if they're a minute long, which usually they are, that's like the rule of thumb. We're charging anywhere from like, for our friends, anywhere from like $350 to some people I charge like $700 for them. So I want to say the average is probably about $500 per ad. That's because we do around 30,000 views and listens per show. We don't really guarantee an ROI on it. That's not really how it works. So it's basically just like a flat fee, and it lives on the show in perpetuity. Because we've had shows where we've had sponsors. We did a show, 7 months goes by, and because, I don't know, the YouTube gods decided that video needs to be shown in front of a bunch of people, it gets a bunch more views. And then we hear back from a sponsor like 8 months later, like, hey, this your promo code's really doing well because this one video took off out of nowhere. So it's really tough to, like, you can kind of ballpark it, but to like really, I can't tell what video is going to do work really well. I know like certain guys, like SEAL Team 6 guy, Delta Force guy, that's like low hanging fruit that I know will do well numbers wise. But sometimes we have like a CIA analyst on who's like, okay, this will do well. This will get to the 30,000, but they'll get like 100,000 views on YouTube. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. Like, I wish I had the key because I'd be a billionaire. But, yeah, so you basically just flat fee it essentially for sponsors and brands. And it's ballpark $20 per CPM. You'll have like, this is getting very into the weeds. You'll have some networks that are trying to pitch you to take your podcast and sell it for you. Then they'll say, nah, we can get you $30, $50 per CPM. Take it with a grain of salt. The rule of thumb is anywhere from $20 to $25 per CPM. And if you're a podcast out there that's like doing well, the benchmark for views and listens for making money on a podcast in terms of like live reads, sponsors, is 10,000. You get to that point, that's the hardest part, right? Like, that's the toughest part. The team house did that before I got there. They were averaging around 10,000 views and listens per show. Garnering that initial audience is the absolute toughest, most unpredictable thing. Like, you don't know if it's going to work. After that, there are headaches, obviously, with dealing with sponsors and networks and all this shit, but it's pretty straightforward, I would say. You know what I mean? Like, the toughest part is garnering the audience. I wish I knew the key. I wish I knew the key to that, because I would also be a billionaire if you did know that. I mean, but I remember even now, like, I talk to networks because I definitely don't want to just keep doing the ad sales, because in and of itself, it's a job by itself. And I like to focus on the production. I like to do more shows. We're working on the knives. So, like, our hands are kind of full. I'd love to have a network that like gave a shit about the show and like we're be able to sell the ads. The problem with that is, though, if you're not big enough, you can get lost in the shuffle. They're not going to have the white glove treatment that you would have on your own thing, right?
Yeah. So, there are certain things that you can't control. Sometimes you don't have no idea what's going to be popular and what's going to flop. Are there metrics, KPIs that lead and lag measures that you do track that will help you determine you're going to continue to get revenue, you continue to be successful?
I mean, that's a great question. You kind of are a little bit at the mercy of like the YouTube gods and the Spotify and iTunes gods. The thing I would say about like the audio platforms is it's very consistent numbers wise. You're never going to, even if you have a big show that you get 30,000 listens, just listens, that's a huge show. That means like that show for us, that show is doing hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. On YouTube, you have a way better chance of a show taking off, getting like hundreds of thousands of views as compared to audio where it's pretty standard, right? Like we're at around, like, I would say on average per show, doesn't matter who we have on, it's at 15,000 listens over 30 days. It's tough because like YouTube, specifically YouTube, to try and track like money wise, like how much money you're gonna make, it's almost impossible because over the last 4 months, we've had some big shows that have helped us with our views and our watch hours, because that's important for YouTube. Our revenue on YouTube has like quadrupled, which is amazing. But like I think I'm an eternal pessimist, me thinking, when is this bottom going to drop and it's going to go back down? Thankfully for the last 4 months, it's kept going up and it's leveled out. But yeah, you can't really like ballpark it. The only thing you really have control over is like the ads that you sell to brands. In terms of like, because who knows what happens with YouTube? It's happened a couple of times already where they have like these quote unquote ad apocalypses where like advertisers get really scared and like the ad revenue gets gutted for some reason. So like you're kind of at their mercy. That's why it does help to supplement with like a Patreon and like things like that. So like, you know, your viewers actually can help like sustain it, because for a long time, the Team House was basically making our rent off Patreon, you know, off of those 500-600 people that pay $5 a month, would take care of our rent, take care of like, you know, regular stuff. And the YouTube stuff and the audio stuff was like extra, but it hasn't been like that forever. It's like, we've really seen a growth in net revenue and growth in viewership over the last, I would say, year.
And through Patreon, you get it's like a fan club, right?
Basically,
You get those loyal fans that are willing to pay a little bit to get a little bit extra.
Yeah. We give them like an extra show per month where it's just us, you know, shooting the shit. We also it's completely ad-free audio and video, right? So they, you know, and they get early access to the audio. So there are perks, right, for being with the Patreon.
I'm even aware of some creators who have levels of subscription within Patreon. So that's so there's another
we have that.
There's another revenue stream.
Yeah. I mean, we have that, but like 90% of our people are $5 a month people. We have 4 or 5 people that pay $100 a month, who are like unbelievable. We try to do Zoom calls with those folks, you know, once a month and stuff like that. I'm also gonna give them. I'm probably gonna do like, they get free the Team House knives that we're gonna do. We're gonna send those guys 5 free knives. Also, they get invited to our Christmas party too, the $100 people. And if they're ever in New York, they can come by the show and watch the show live and hang out with us.
That's cool.
I mean, if any of our patrons honestly hit us up and we're like, hey, I'm in New York, can I come watch the show live? We'd probably say yes, even the $5 guys.
Yeah, I haven't been back to Brooklyn since I enlisted out of Fort Hamilton.
Wow, Fort Hamilton. I went to that school, Fort Hamilton. I know the Army base well.
You know, I used to live there for a little while. I was in Gravesend.
Okay, cool. I'm in Bay Ridge, so we're relatively close.
In fact, I was just thinking about, I know some of the NYPD bomb squad guys, and I was thinking about introducing you guys. Maybe you can get up to their demo range up in Queens.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That might be fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But it's always fun to blow stuff up. But back to that second part, and I see there's definitely many ways to monetize the show. It might be difficult to predict what is successful, but I suppose it comes down to content quality and consistency, right? You track what does become popular, try to reproduce it, but you've got a schedule to maintain, because of course, if you don't stick to your content schedule and you're not consistent, both your audience and the almighty algorithms get angry.
100%, yeah.
But that ties into the content part. So what do you attribute the success and the continued success of Team House? Where do you find these stories? What are the stories about, and how do you expand on them? Like, you're talking about producing something to maybe dive a little deeper into some of these incredible stories.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say 80% of our guests come from Jack and Jack's like contacts and stuff like that. We really try and find people that haven't told their story before. There are people that we have that have been on other podcasts and stuff that are similar to ours, but we really try like if we find somebody who hasn't been on a podcast before, we're like insta book them. We also I'm comparing it to other pods that are similar to ours. We like having like the CIA analyst on or the national security journalist on, that like they really know their P's and Q's about what their subject matter. They're like, I would even argue they're subject matter experts, even like authors who have written a book, who spent 5-6 years writing a book about a valley in Afghanistan. Wesley Morgan comes to mind. He had encyclopedia knowledge of what went down in a specific valley in Afghanistan throughout 10 years of the war.
Mm-hmm.
I love those shows. I know those shows won't do as well as like Army Ranger with 15 deployments or Delta Force guy or, and I love those shows too, but I really like deep diving with geopolitical people that, stuff with Ukraine. The investigative journalists and the authors really know their shit, and it's really informative. Like, I would recommend those shows as being the best shows. We do have law enforcement folks on too, which are great shows too. Usually federal. We'll have an FBI, ATF. We had one guy, his name is James Olson, former head of counterintelligence for the CIA. This guy wasn't, he was in Moscow in the 70s, like shucking and jiving with the Soviets, which is, respect. But, his latter part of his career is at Langley, looking for spies. My opinion, that was one of my favorite shows. Like, I'm talking about
fancy stuff.
Yeah. So we like to have it's a pretty broad spectrum. It's not just the operators. It's the CIA officers, the analysts, the journalists. We really try to look at it as like a historical kind of.
Do you like to stick to a particular era, time frame, or
no? Because we have a lot of Vietnam guys on. Even a lot of guys from between Vietnam. Some of the guys bleed over from Vietnam to 80s, 90s. We like having a broad range of stuff. I'm assuming it probably concentrates a little bit more GWAT, but we have a lot of old timers on that have like some sick stories from whether it's MACV SOG guys in Vietnam to like people who went to Panama, people who went to Mogadishu, like even guys who worked in the 80s where like nothing crazy was going on in terms of 100,000. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, have you had that? I just finished reading The Dirty Tricks Department. Are you familiar with the book? Yeah,
no.
It was great. The author was doing research in the National Archives for something completely unrelated, but he kept coming across all this declassified information about the OSS and the formation of the CIA and Bill Donovan.
I'm gonna write it down. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's such a great read, and I want to get the author on. I can't recall his name right now, but the Dirty Tricks department was a really fun read, all about the different types of inventions
Cool.
they came up with, the forgery, the this the operators in the field. It was really good. It was really good. That'd be a fun interview.
Yeah, that does sound super interesting.
So it sounds like you guys are having a great time. You're actually making a lot of money doing it. And let me ask you, for anyone who wants to get into become a creator, where do they get there? Where do they start? And what do they need to know ahead of time? Maybe some lessons learned. If I knew this back when, type of thing.
I mean, it all depends what you're trying to make, right? So if you want to be a podcaster and stuff, you got to make.
Let's say you want to make an income from it.
So what I would suggest is don't spend a ton of money on gear. I would, to start off, you can find a good camera that's 4K for $600, right? You don't have to spend $4,000 on some like Gucci thing. Secondly, to make money on it, dude, it's so difficult. It's such an X factor. Like, it's so like up to the gods or whoever the powers that be are. Like, so there's a couple ways. If you're really into filmmaking and editing and things like that, you could really do a lot with just YouTube, right? You could really make some short, cool, funny stuff that's original, post it on YouTube, work on your editing skills and stuff like that. And that could, you build up enough of a small portfolio where you could get clients that either want something filmed or, if you can make it, like find brands that want things filmed and kind of get into that world. Podcasting wise, again, with the gear, you can get a podcast cooking for $300. Get good mics, decent mics, a webcam. It does not need to be Gucci. You don't have to do what Jack Murphy did for the Team House. Trust me, where he went and spent like $20,000 on gear. You could literally get it going for nothing. I would also suggest you make content that you'd like to watch. You don't want to make it feel like you're just doing this because like this is what the algorithm wants. And listen, I do stuff that I hate doing, right? Like we have 2-hour shows, 3-hour shows sometimes. And I have to cut them down to 1-minute shorts on YouTube because that's what YouTube prefers, right? And the way I reconcile that with myself is, okay, we give somebody a 1-minute taste of what we're talking about. And like, let's say one of the shorts gets 500,000 views. It's amazing. If we can convert, 5,000 people to become subscribers and watching the long form stuff, then we did our job. It's useful, even though I hate doing it because like I love the long form stuff. And I think like if you can't handle listening to like an hour, 2 hours of a podcast, you just want to look at one little 1-minute short. It drives me crazy, but it's something that needs to be done. I mean, dude, I wish I had the answer. And you brought it up, actually, being consistent. If you're doing a podcast, if you're posting videos on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, you have to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you are consistent, it's tough to make it work where you're garnering an audience and making a living or making some money just as a side hustle. It'll still be hard. But if you're not consistent, it's impossible. It is impossible.
I knew this from when we created a TikTok channel, my wife and I, during the COVID time, quarantine, when everybody had more time on their hands.
Right on, yeah.
And we started a cooking show, Aaron Hill's Cooking Without Looking. Yeah. And we were consistent. We did, something every single day, if not a full-on recipe demonstration, maybe me just talking for a few moments. But if we took a day or two off, the algorithm let us know.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
it was not pleased, and the next few videos wouldn't get as much exposure.
Yeah,
So yeah, you're absolutely right. Consistency. In fact, I think it's Grant Cardone says, it's definitely not quality over quantity. It is quantity, and then work on your quality.
yeah,
And it's unfortunate that that's true, but yeah,
I agree with that. It's definitely unfortunate. Like I have a couple friends of mine who are comedians, right? One's a stand-up, the other one's like a comedian on Instagram. She wants to be like an actor and stuff, and she's a good actor. She's very talented. They both are. But I see what they go through with their Instagram and their TikTok. It's like you need to continue to feed the beast. And like, sure, you'll have some hits that are funny and good and well thought out and original. But as you keep feeding the beast, right, you got to make sure you post a couple times a week or whatever they think, your quality is going to go down, right? It's just inevitable. You kind of keep scooping coal into that fire. Like, and I know it's frustrating for them.
how much should somebody spend on equipment to make it sound and look good? They don't have to break the bank, but how much do you think somebody should expect to invest, at least in the beginning?
Yeah, I would say max $400 for everything. Max. You can find a really good mic for $100. You can find a good, decent, a solid webcam, or even a solid used like DSLR. If you really want to get Gucci with it, for $300-400 nowadays. The programming, I mean, like Riverside is what, like $20 a month, right? Like, yeah, I would say max $400 to $500. You can make it work. 100%, you can make it work. You could have like studio quality sound and audio for $500, especially podcasting. Even like if you're, let's say you're a person that shoots like little sketches or, short films. You don't need a lot.
I'm working on trying to build an entire studio pretty soon, because I'm working in the home office right here where everything's a hard surface, and the other side of this wall right here to my right is the kids' room. So
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I'm thinking about building. I'm going to turn a Home Depot shed into a soundproof studio and throw it out back. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way to go. I mean, like my studio right here, this is also my bedroom in my house.
Yeah.
I have soundproofing all over the place. It looks like it's complete overkill. But you could find like, couple squares of soundproofing, dampen the sound a little bit, a ring light, like all this stuff, you can make it happen. Like, Casey Neistat, right? Casey Neistat uses the same camera over and over again with a little shotgun mic on top of it. You literally can make a movie like that. You could really do an hour-and-a-half movie. You can make it like that and make it look good, especially if you know how to edit and you know Adobe or you know any of the editing programs. You can make it look incredible. It's all about you, basically. And it's all about you make something, you love it, and, you're happy, you're proud of yourself. Don't let the number of views or listens or anything like that affect how you feel about what you're making. It's nice to be validated. Trust me. I love that feeling too. Like, hey, good job on the movie, or hey, great podcast. I get it. It feels good. And you got to make it. Yeah. But you got to make it for you. You got to make it for you.
I was going to say, I'm bad enough at just getting the camera pointed in the right direction, much less proper lighting and all of that. What about the tips for background studio setup? Things like that. Any pointers?
Okay, so I'll give you like our studio in the team house. We have two setups. We have one that's like a couch setup, and we have one that's like, more, it's loungy, cigar lounge vibes. And then the other side is more, sit up at a table with bookshelves in the back. The lounge setup, me and Jack literally put it together, I want to say all in for the whole entire set. Paint, the paintings, the couches, everything. The way it looks right now, we spent about $2,000 because I got stuff from Facebook Marketplace. The couch I got for $300. The chairs I got for $150. The coffee table I got for $50. The rug I got for $50. Like, you can make it look sweet without spending a ton of money. And if you have a cool bookcase behind you, like, that's cool enough, dude. You know what I mean? Our table on the other set initially was an old dining room table that I found on Facebook Marketplace. We got rid of that, and I got a husky table, like a workbench, and it's perfect. It was $300, and it's perfect. You can lift it up, bring it down. It's got wheels on it. The one thing we did splurge on is Jack, because he's a lunatic. He got a saltwater aquarium, saltwater fish tank that's 88 gallons, which has been like the bane of our existence for the last 4 or 5 months because it's super hard to maintain. But we let Jack splurge every once in a while. You know what I mean? We got to keep him happy. But there's ways to do it, man. Super cheap, super easy. And it's super easy. Like, even my movie that I made a feature-length film. Instead of 4K, I used a Gucci camera. The camera cost me $3,000, right? And I ended up selling it after I was done for $3,000, right? So you can make it happen. You can make it happen if you really want to. If you really want to tell a story, you really want to do a podcast, whether it's history or interview or whatever it might be.
So what you're saying is, okay, so don't get too wrapped around the axle when it comes to equipment, in studio, stage setup. You can make improvements along the way. Same with the content. It's get started and be consistent. And then make content that you would like to consume yourself.
100%. Yeah. If there's a subject you love, right? If there's a subject you're passionate about, it doesn't even matter what it is. Make a podcast about that.
You got to have fun doing it, right?
Yeah.
Or that's going to come across.
Mm-hmm. If you love the New York Jets, make a podcast just about the New York Jets. I'm not even joking. You'll find a niche audience for that. And then you gotta play the game, do the short form, try and get it out there, try and find some viral clip to make people get their eyeballs on you, and put yourself out there. Like, let's say you want to get guests. Don't be scared of asking them. Don't be scared. The worst thing they could say is no.
Well, I didn't want to get into that because I'm not a big... I don't really follow NFL very, very much, but the Cleveland Browns are looking pretty strong. We're 3 games into it, but looking pretty good this year.
I mean, for the Cleveland Browns, 3 games into it, that's pretty good for them.
It's pretty good for them 3 games in.
Yeah.
But either motto for decades has been, there's always next Sunday. So it definitely sounds like a very different, they're in very different subject matter than Team House, but it definitely sounds like it's going to be fun, if not also funny. So that's right. In fact, I did a podcast with a blind technology podcaster, but he's also a comedian right there I think he's near Jamaica, Queens area.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. To connect you guys. Anyways, I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing a little bit of your knowledge, your history, and what you've learned along the way. We can add, have dependable internet service when conducting an interview on your podcast to the list of pro tips.
Yeah, but even if you do have great internet, it could go out at any time. It does. Just make sure it's good and, hope for the best, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And next time in New York, I'm going to have to look you up. Is there anything else you want to share before I let you go? And with that, if anybody wants to follow or connect with you, how can they do that?
I'm pretty much out there. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. I don't really do a lot on LinkedIn. I sometimes troll my friends who are like in the construction world, I write stuff that's weird in their comments just for fun. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me everywhere. It's Dee Takos. Yeah, and just check out the Team House. I got really nothing to promote for myself. I just want to say, Aaron, thanks a lot for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. Your show was awesome. Check out your show on the Team House too, if anyone hasn't. It was incredible. I think you're an incredible dude. And it's been a pleasure.
Well, yeah, same here. I enjoyed being on your show. I've enjoyed you being on mine, and I really appreciate it. So all the best to you in the future, and thank you very much.
Likewise, Aaron. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Later, dude. This is awesome.